Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Yarnflakes podcast. My name is Audrey and this is a podcast about knitting, weaving, all things yarning, and now sewing. Welcome to all new and returning viewers. I hope you are all doing very well. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I have been dealing with a bit of silly stuff lately, but it's all okay, and I'm gonna get my ear infection thingy sorted. Hopefully, I'm gonna get my glasses fixed because I broke my glasses yesterday, and I am going to stop getting ridiculously upset for breaking glasses. But yes, I am filming a little bit later than usual, so I apologize if the light is going to go away slowly and if this episode is going to be a bit darker and more blurry than usual. It will also go up on a Thursday, which is tomorrow morning, because I couldn't film this morning, so yes, all of the things are getting just a little bit delayed, but hopefully it will still be a nice episode. I want to quickly thank all of you who went and had a look at my Mochárkál, which is the latest design that I published on Ravelry. Yes, thank you so much. It is so lovely to hear your feedback on it, and I feel very humbled, and it's very heartwarming that we want to knit it. So yes, thank you for that. This week I have a bit of knitting. I will talk about sewing and show you my very first sewing projects, and I will also have a teeny tiny bit of weaving towards the end. You will find timestamps to all the different sections of the podcast in the description down below, so if you don't want to watch anything, feel free to skip ahead. And there will also be links to everything that I talk about, as well as my social media and my patterns for sale on Ravelry and the Ravelry podcast group, which you can find in the description, and you can join if you want to chat about the podcast, chat about anything really, and hopefully participate in some stuff in the future. I look tired, and that's because I didn't sleep very well in the last few nights, and like I said, I have issues. So I try to curl my hair, but it actually makes me look a bit crazy on top of that. But we're gonna have to accept this, and yes, start with the episode already. First off, I am going to say quickly what I'm wearing, and this is the beautiful Ola yoke, which is a sweater pattern by Ella Gordon, and yes, I will link it down below. Knitting wise, I haven't done that much. I'm kind of spreading across several projects at the same time, some of which are big and long, and it's not working really well for me. So I decided that I would focus on finishing what needs to be finished, and hopefully I will feel more productive about it. But I have a few things I want to share with you this week, and the first one is a half object. This is the Darjeeling socks, which is a pattern by Kat Bordy that you can find on the Knitter's Book of Socks, which is a publication from Clara Parks, and I have finished one. So it's a busy yarn, it's a busy pattern. It isn't blocked, but I had to put it on the sock blocker to show you because it just looks plain awful when it's not. And yes, so I am using a beautiful variegated yarn, which Yeah. Which is Golden Years by Marianne Yarn, which is a German dyer, and it's this mixture of hot pink, rust, bright lime green, yellow, specks of blue as well, and yeah, it's knitting up beautifully. The color is very accurate here, despite the sharp bluish contrast of this late spring afternoon. Did I say I'm from the southwest of France? I'm French, that's why I speak weirdly and badly. And yes, so it is spring here is chaotic. We have lots of wind, so it just can be sunny, and the next minute completely tornadoes and storm and heavy rain and hail. But yeah, so right now it's a little bit uncertain, but I'm not British, but I still talk about the weather on every single episode. Regardless, the color is quite accurate. So Golden Years by Marianne Yarns, and I really like how it's knitting up. So this is a toe-up sock pattern, and I really like how it combines a bunch of different textures. So just gonna take it off to show you the front so you can see that I'm not lying when I say it looks like nothing before it's blocked. But you know, so this is the main texture pattern that runs down the front of the sock. You basically have I call this broken stockinette. I don't know if it has a name. Basically you knit like 3 rows of stockinette and then you break it with a purl. And in the center you have this line of stitches here. So the sock is knit toe up, and about at the middle of your foot you start an arch extension, which is this triangle that you can see here. And I was afraid, I said last episode, I was afraid it would make it too big, make the sock too big for me. But actually you end up with the same number of stitches that I would have if I had made a gusset. So the sock fits. It's a bit roomier than what I usually get, but this is because it's a toe-up sock and it's 62 then 63 stitches, which is a tiny bit too big for me. I usually do 60 stitches sock, but it's okay. It's a more comfortable sock. So yeah, you turn the heel, then you have some sort of a heel flap with twisted stitches alternating. Then you have a rib portion. This is all the back, and then you start this kind of checkered texture while still maintaining that line in the middle. So let me put it back on the blocker. I really like it, just keeps you really interested. You keep switching from one texture to another, and yeah, I've been working on those quite fast, even if they're knitting up definitely slower than a vanilla sock. Yeah, I could knit one of those in a day because I just keep going. You start the toe, then you have to knit a little bit, and then you start the extension, and then when you're done with the extension, oh well, you do the heel. And then when you're done with the heel portion, you have this rib. And then, oh, you're done with the heel and the rib, and there's just this left. So it just breaks down the sock in very little pieces, which I really enjoyed doing. And yeah, I think they will look really beautiful once they're blocked. I have already quite advanced on the second one. As you can see, I'm just about to finish that rib at the back. Turn the heel and everything, and yeah, I'm almost done. I believe I'll have it done tonight, so that's quite exciting. Another thing about this, there's no rib at the cuff, which means that I bound off knitwise all the stitches using a stretchy bind off. The way I do it is I knit 2 and then knit them 2 together, you see, and then I knit 1, knit the last 2 together, etc. The dogs are playfully fighting, and it happens to be quite noisy. so I apologize if you can hear some ruffling in the background. So you don't have to bind off in rib, which I really don't like doing. I think it's the thing that I really don't like about knitting is binding off rib. So I'm quite pleased that this sock didn't require me to do that, because that's why I usually don't do toe-up socks. And yeah, so maybe the answer is just don't make a cuffed rib, a ribbed cuff. Yeah. So that's pretty much been a huge part of my knitting this week. And the second project I want to show you is my Zweig sweater. I'm showing it to you because it's beautiful, because really I haven't been working on it that much. I've been a bit distracted, as you will see, but I am almost finished with the body actually. I believe I have one more repeat of the crosses to do, and then I'll be able to do the rib, and I'll have a pretty good length for the body. So this is the Zweig sweater by Caitlin Hunter that everybody and their grandmother has knitted. And yes, I am knitting it out of some superwash merino sock yarn that I hand dyed in chocolate brown, and the contrast color is Knit Cosmic Strings in the marshmallow colorway, which shows up the lace really beautifully, and I cannot wait to block this. But yeah, enjoying the cabley cables. I'm considering knitting the sleeves 2 at a time, but then with the cabley bits on the sleeves, because I do want to do the cables on the sleeves too. I admit that I've thought of making the sleeves plain stockinette, but then I knew I would have regretted it, because this texture, to me, it makes the sweater, of course the yoke is absolutely stunning, but the fact that all the interest of the sweater isn't only in the yoke, and then you have this texture on the body and the sleeves, I think it's what makes it interesting and what pushed me to knit it as well. And if I would only have it on the body and have plain sleeves, it would look quite awkward. So yeah, I'm not sure how well 2 at a time would work with the cables. I think it would make a lot of unnecessary fuss, and yeah, I don't need that when I'm knitting sleeves already. And that's all I'm going to show you in knitting, because I have been working obviously on my blanket, which is almost there, guys, almost there, and on other stuff, but yeah, not significant progress to show you. So yeah, that's it. However, have you seen Caitlin's Hunter new pattern? I can show you this. It's just things that are on the pattern notes on Ravelry anyway. I just love that she makes watercolors and illustrations for every one of her pattern, and I just think that's so lovely. And yes, so Tecumseh. Wikipedia says you can say both Tecumseh and Tecumseh, so I'm gonna go with Tecumseh because it's cute. And if you have more input on the Native American story and correct pronunciation, please do tell me in the comments. But in the meantime, I'm gonna go with Tecumseh. The Tecumseh sweater, I'm kind of a creep, and I've been stalking Caitlin's Instagram profile since she started making that sweater. I love it. You know, I really like her designs, and every time she starts a new sweater, I'm really interested in it, and there's always a point where I'm really thinking, oh, I'm going to knit this one too. I'm going to knit this one too. And for the last couple of ones, in the end, I changed my mind, and the design, although I still liked it and find it beautiful, weren't quite as my thing. than the Zweig and the Tenya is. But this one, from start to finish, I absolutely loved it, and I knew I would make it because I just love it. So it's a boxy shaped sweater with 3 colors and these stripes of colorwork patterns, which are really graphic and simple, and it's a really interesting shape. It looks really nice. People have been saying that it is quite reminiscent of some Native American kind of type of things, and which is why it was fitting when she asked for a name that someone came up with, Tecumseh. So yeah, I really love it. It is knit out of DK weight yarn, but I happen to have leftover yarns that are just perfect for it, and it's fingering weight. And I thought, well, you know, it's not too bad. It's not like I want to knit a sweater in fingering and it's written for worsted or aran. You know, decay and fingering, you have some room where it's like slightly the same gauge. But I still thought I would need to like knit a couple of sizes up. And actually the gauge is 22 stitches per 10 centimeters, which is completely achievable in fingering. It's actually the gauge, the same gauge, both stitch-wise and row-wise, that is used in the Pavement Sweater by Vera Välimäki. And I really like the drape of that sweater, and I think it's really good for a boxy, I think the fabric is really good for a boxy type sweater. So I'm just going to knit it like it is, and use fingering yarns. Plus, I've noticed that if I knit the small size for this one, which will give me about 110 centimeters in the bust, which for me is 25 centimeters of ease, it's about 43.5 inches. I've seen that I will end up with approximately the same number of stitches than I would have if I had knitted the medium size of the Zweig, which I considered doing, but thought it would be a bit too roomy for this design. But for this, I think the extra room is going to be really good. Enough chatter. I feel like I'm really going really fast this week, but yeah, like I said, I'm sorry. It's an unusual setup for me. It's late, the dogs are noisy, I broke my glasses. If you watch my stories on Instagram, I probably posted like 4 stories in a row where I'm like, I broke my glasses. You know, the little things that you can laugh about in the end. So yeah, I'm sorry if I'm a bit awkward, but it's how it is. I should stop apologizing for it, because I'm guessing it's more annoying that I keep mentioning that I'm weird. It's more annoying than me actually being weird. You know what I mean? The yarn I'm going to use for the Tecumseh sweater. So I have some superwash merino nylon thingy undyed, so it's cream. I have for the big, looks like banners, you know, these big ones, I have, well, precisely the yarn I use for my pavement sweater, which is Malabrigo sock in the Pocion colorway, which is just stunning. I really think this is one of my favorite hand-dyed yarns ever. This color is just stunning. So I thought that would make a really good contrast color. And for the little crosses, I have this, which is an ugly skein, because this is what happens when you use yarns for weaving and you don't make it properly. And I think it's going to be a pain to wind into a ball because the middle is lost, but we'll see how that goes. This is Heartland by Wool Boon. It's one of the first hand-dyed yarns I bought, and then I had to go and look for it in the United States, but you know, I really like Wool Boon. She's a great indie dyer, and I just wished she was more accessible to me now. But you know, so this is Heartland, and it is like a mustardy yellow with rust and this kind of dark blue, grayish blue, and a bit of green. And I'm aware it's highly variegated, but it looks muted. Do you know what I mean? It looks like it's washed out in a similar tone. So in contrast with a completely undyed, I think we'll still be able to tell the little crosses pretty well. And again, being very original with my color choices, aren't I? It's not my fault. I had leftovers that matched both the style and the sample that Caitlin did. So it's not my fault. That's how it is. But I think this is a stunning combination, and I think it's going to make a really nice sweater. And I can't wait to cast this on. I am having a very good excuse to do it, even though it's not supposed to be my priority, because I have a poncho to make and I have several designs to cast on. So another fingering weight sweater just after this flag. It's not my priority, but I have a very good excuse. Lise Tailor, I don't know why I'm saying it like that, but Lise, who is an absolutely lovely French podcaster. So if you do speak French and you don't know Lise, which is unlikely because she's great, you should check her podcast. In any case, check her Instagram because it's beautiful. And she also has a blog where she shares her knitting and sewing makes, and she writes in English as well in it. So this is accessible to you in case you don't speak French. But yes, Lise is starting a cal, a knit-along. So it's a Frenchy cal on Ravelry, and it's a loose cal. So the goal is to knit epoxy type sweater. Perfect sweater for it. It's great. It is great. And that's going to be it for knitting. Hopefully next week I will have a couple of finished objects and maybe some new things. I really want to do color work again. The Tecumseh is going to be color work, obviously, but I mean I really want to make mittens and like a more woolly, rustic color work sweater again. Oh, I can show you something. I had, and I believe I must have showed it to you on one of my very first podcast episodes. I had some Cascade Eco in a light, not light grey, but medium grey, that I wanted to knit the Wolf River sweater out of. You know, it's a very popular sweater pattern by Melissa. And then it's a German sounding name, so I'm not going to try it. But you know, it's the Wolf River sweater. It has a beautiful lace all over texture, and I really like it. I've been wanting to do it since about 2 years, and I've changed my mind. I don't know, there's so many sweaters that I really want to make, that I've been rethinking my queue and looking at my stash and thinking, okay, I have this yarn, do I really want it to be that? And I kept changing my mind for a lot of things. So yeah, a few sweaters quantity that I have showed you in the past have now completely changed projects. So, you know, when I show you yarn in my yarn show segment, you shouldn't listen to what I'm saying, because chances are I'm changing my mind like an hour after I filmed that episode. For example, I recently showed you some yarn by Malabrigo yarn, and I said I wanted to make the Let It Fall pattern out of it, the Let It Fall from Matilda Cruz. And I changed my mind already. Like I showed you that a couple of episodes ago. But then I had a design idea with this yarn, and I think it's going to be much better than using it for a sweater that I like, but that I don't necessarily feel like I really need it. So yes, I had some Cascade Eco in grey. I wanted to make the Wolf River sweater out of it. I changed my mind. I'm not going to do the Wolf River sweater out of it. What can I do with Cascade Eco? Oh my god, Jennifer Steingas patterns. She has a lot of her yokes that are made in Letlopi, which is like more of a worsted iron weight, so that's perfect for Cascade Eco. And I especially love one of her most recent designs, which is the Drama sweater. I really like it. It's a beautiful graphic pattern, just like she always does, and the way she does it is that she has a black body and then she has a gradient on the colorwork yoke, actually, something that goes from gray to cream, but I'm just going to have two contrast color, make the body in one color and then the entire colorwork in cream. So I took my gray Cascade Eco, and let me grab it. It was drying, and I overdyed it, so it was a much lighter gray than this. It was like like a medium gray. I'm trying to look for something similar, but obviously I don't have anything next to me. So I overdyed it, and I wanted it to be as dark as possible, black if I could, knowing that dyeing black is difficult. Over-dyeing a commercial yarn in black in this skein is very difficult. I could have broken it into several different skeins, but I was too lazy for that, and I managed to get a charcoal grey, and this is in the light, so if I get away from the light it looks black, which I'm super happy about. I was really scared when I took them out of the pot, because it looked, when it was wet, you know, it just looked not so different from when it was dry and previously. And so I was like, oh, it didn't work. But actually I managed to get a really beautiful dark charcoal, and so I have two of these, and I have a cream contrast color. So yeah, I've been over-dyeing this a couple of days ago, hence the ugly grey tinted hands. But you know, I really want to do that, although that's not really reasonable, because a bulky weight sweater now, considering I already plan on making an alpaca poncho for this very end of winter / beginning of spring, I don't think I'll be doing that sweater soon, but I have a lot of colorwork sweater, including all over sweaters that are a bit closer to feral that I really want to do. So yeah, you might see some of that in the next couple of months. Yeah. Are you ready for the drama? So I really want to learn how to sew. I have a sewing machine for a while now, and I'm just really attracted to the idea of a wardrobe that has as much handmade in it as possible. I don't want anything fancy. I just want to be able to do blouses and tops and dresses, you know. And that was one of my goals for this year. So I really want to know how to sew. And I just find myself in a situation where the world isn't helping me. Yeah, I might be biased because I am so deep in the knitting community that I know where the resources are if you want to learn something. I found with sewing is not that accessible. But yeah, maybe that's a biased point of view because of my situation. However, there's something that is really making it inaccessible for me right now, and it's fabric choice. There's basic information and help that I'm not finding readily available. So there's a lot of problems with that. But precisely my thing this time, last week, was fabric choice. I had a few beginners pattern, like that said, literally beginners, super friendly, it's so easy, you need to start sewing by making this pattern. And they gave zero or very little suggestions of the fabric types that you need. And yeah, that kind of left me baffled. The choice is very overwhelming. Obviously, I know basic stuff like knit versus woven, but there's so much more to that. And I know the fabric properties from my background in fiber work, and I've also worked at a clothing shop, but that doesn't make me connect fabric properties to a certain garment. And yeah, maybe I need more theory about dressmaking, I guess. But I just think that making a beginner's pattern should include the information. At least just say what kind of fabric you have in mind, because it's so essential to the design. And yeah, you run the risk of making something that you're going to be disappointed in, and that's not necessarily because you executed it bad or because you don't like the pattern in the end, but just because your fabric is wrong. And it just adds another barrier when you're in a situation where mistakes are so bad, because if I mismatch my yarn and pattern, well, the yarn is still there, it doesn't matter. I can't really uncut fabric, so that's a thing, and I really don't want to waste things. Now, the advice that everybody gives is, oh, practice on cheap fabric. Yes, even though I'm not going to get a good idea of how to make a fluid dress if I practice on a curtain, you know? It's not, in my opinion, going to give me, sure, it's going to help me actually learn how to make the thing, but it's not going to motivate me. And I need a lot of motivation to learn how to sew. That's just how I am with that. And yeah, I also found that cheap fabric isn't that cheap, and it's still a waste that I don't want to produce. So I've been whining mostly and talking about it on Instagram, and wondering, just why isn't there a Ravelry for sewing? And a few people gave me links to websites that had pattern review system and things. But I was thinking, why isn't there something community-based where people can link to the patterns and to the fabric categories that they used for this pattern? So you would have like a bank of information where you would see the realizations of different people on this on a certain pattern that you're interested in making, and what type of fabric that they use, what modifications that they did. Just Ravelry in sewing, basically. Because of course I was looking on the internet, I was browsing the hashtags of the patterns that I wanted to make, and I was also looking for blog posts, and I couldn't find any help. A lot of people just said that they found this pretty fabric. Cool. And you know, maybe I would have had better help if I was looking at internationally popular patterns, but still these patterns were made a lot of times, and I rarely found someone mentioning the type of fabric that they use. People have been making these things several times and never saying that they used viscose or crepe or whatever. And I find that a bit odd coming from a knitting point of view, maybe. And I was talking to a couple of people on Instagram about it. I can't really guess from the picture what kind of fabric people used. Even it's just so many different types of fabric, and it's great. It's a great thing, but if as a beginner, it is very, very, very scary. And I was also talking to Mrs. M's Curiosity Cabinet, who she pinpointed something very interesting, and I think I found what's wrong with me about this. She told me that she found that in the sewing community, the approach to materials was very different than in the knitting community. And yeah, I think that's the key of this whole situation, and why I was so puzzled to have this problem. I don't want to learn how to sew, especially learning by using cheap materials I don't love. You know me, you know I knit for the yarn, I knit for the fibers. So it's really hard for me to throw that perspective away, I think. And with sewing, I wish I could just jump, jump to the stage where I know how to do what I want, so I can make it how I want with the fabrics I want. And it's reflected in the 3 things that I made, and I'm eventually going to show you when I finish that rant. The only one that is for me a pure success is actually the one with the most precious fabric. So to kind of sum my thing up, I really hope I won't have too many failures in sewing, because I know that if I'm not satisfied with the finished things that I make, it will be very hard for me to keep wanting to learn, and that's why it took me so long to jump in it. I don't feel the same with knitting. I can knit anything, even if the finished garment isn't necessarily something I would wear, just because I want to do this technique or learn this construction. With sewing, I feel very different. I feel like I want to have sewn that dress. I don't want to sew it. So, yeah, what happened is that in all of this, I got so worked up and just very, very frustrated and unpleased with myself because I was having this issue, and well, that's why I started sewing the next day. Maybe I needed to get really mad at myself and be in a state where I needed to kind of prove myself wrong, because that was, the pattern is for beginners and it's not helpful in terms of the fabric choice. I have all this fabric, I have all this pattern, and I just thought, okay, I'm going to match them as best as I can, and I'm going to start doing it. And if it doesn't work, well, it doesn't work. I'm going to be frustrated, but at least I would have had tried. And hopefully I will be able to keep trying long enough so that I won't have this sort of silly problems anymore, and that I will be satisfied with most of my hand-sewn garments. So I hope you'll enjoy this new journey for me. It's going to be very different because I don't know what I'm doing. If you are yourself an experienced sewist, or just, basically if you cannot be more beginner than me. So any advice, any opinions on what I just said about the materials and things are highly appreciated. I would love to know how you proceed. Is the fabric that you use that important when you're sewing, or do you have a different do you have a different approach? Because I really feel that for me, I'm going to be fabric driven, and if I can't match my fabric and pattern properly, it's going to be a really big issue for me. So I am editing the podcast, and I realized that I wasn't making much sense in this whole way too long segment. So what I mean is, basically, I want to learn using the right types of fabric, not necessarily only using fancy snobbish ones, but I feel that if I'm not using the proper fabrics, just for the sake of learning, I am going to get a lot of disappointments, and yeah, just not being able to get the result that is shown in the design, or that I just simply want, is going to be really frustrating. And I feel that learning how to sew for me, I can't afford a lot of frustrations, because like I said, I'm not enjoying the process so much. I'm loving having handmade clothes. I'm not enjoying the learning process of sewing. So if I have too many failures, well, I might not it's gonna be really hard for me to get to the bottom of it and to keep going and get better, so that I don't have those failures anymore. So that's why I felt so frustrated with that fabric choice issue, because it felt so silly to me not being able to clearly identify what I needed for certain patterns. That, yeah, it was such a ridiculous obstacle in my mind. As a knitter, I love the fibers and I love matching the materials to my project. So yeah, realizing that I wasn't able to do that at all with sewing, it just felt like a wall. So yes, that's a better summary of what I was trying to say this whole time. So I'm going to share this learning process with you, and I know I sounded a bit frustrated and stuff, but I'm actually really excited. So I hope you'll enjoy watching me do nonsense in my sewing adventures. So yeah, I want to show you what I've been making. So like I said, I have more patterns than that I want to make. Yes, because I've been buying patterns and fabrics and not knowing what to do with them. You know, that's me. And that's like when I started, I really liked candles at some point, so I just bought all the candles at once. You know, so I had a bunch of fabrics, and most of them were cheap fabrics that I wasn't so keen on, but you know, I still wanted to start with them, just to do something. And I have done 3 things that I want to show you. So the first one is a top. I can just show you. So I will insert video clips of me modeling the different things I took, just because I want you to be able to see how they fit and what they look like. And yeah, so here's me wearing it. So this is the M comme Madrange top, which is a pattern from a French pattern maker, which is called M comme Marie, which has lots of patterns available, lots of PDF versions. And yeah, I've heard a lot of French people in the sewing community that really like her patterns, and that said that they're very beginner friendly. So it's a fluid top. So I knew I needed something like clearly not quilting cotton, preferably a knit fabric. So I had this thing, which is very flower power, but it's a knit fabric. I think it's an interlock knit. I'm not sure because I had this for a while, but it's definitely, I think it's a knit. It's definitely something that's very light, thin, I mean, and fluid. It's quite stretchy width-wise and lengthwise as well, so it's stretchy in both directions. Yes, and I knew it would work for this type of top. So, you know, with a black pair of jeans, it works. I can deal with it. It's summery. It's very summery. So it's this loose fitting sleeveless top with like a curved back. And yes, I am pretty happy with how it turns out. It's totally wearable. There's no mistakes or anything. The only thing is that I've been very lazy with the hems. So it's two parts basically, and once you've connected them together, you do little hems for the armholes, the neckline, and the bottom. And I've just been super lazy, and I've just done just pulled the fabric back once and then sewed over, which means that it's actually staying neater than what I thought. In the back it's okay, you know, it's not flipping to the right side, so that's actually a lucky thing that my laziness isn't stabbing me, not in the back because it's my fault, so it would stab me in the front, I guess. But yeah, it's okay. It's really comfortable. I really like it. It's simple. It's really easy to do. You need very little fabric for it. This is my first sewn tank top. Do you say tank top or vest? I want to say tank top because vest really sounds like vest in French, which is jacket. So it's just a jacket, so that doesn't work. But I know UK says vest, or US says vest, I don't know. Can you agree and stop confusing the rest of the world with saying different things? Because you have one language, so please agree on stuff. I'm joking. But yeah, this was okay. I will make it again. I will use all the knit fabrics because that's what works with it, and I am pleased that I was able to guess that. It wasn't that complicated, but you'll see what I mean with my fabrics choice problem, and you'll precisely see it with this. So the next thing I sewed, the next thing, I knew this wasn't going to work from the start. I have this dress pattern, which is the Lise dress by Wear Lemonade, which is again a French pattern making company, which I really like. They're basically the reason I want to start to learn how to sew, because I love their patterns. I love the style of it. She has a lot of, I say she because the main maker behind this is called Lisa, and she has a lot of dresses that can look casual and or have a really retro feel to it, and that's a style that I really like. And so the Lise dress is one of their most simple dresses, and it's a beautiful like this A-line, really wide 3/4 sleeves dress. She says use a fabric with a little bit of stretch. I had this knit fabric. It's a polyester knit. The other one was polyester as well. I say polyester because we say it in French, but do you understand what I mean? It's a plastic thing. Synthetic. Okay. And it's really drapey, it's really loose and fine and hugging, and it's extremely stretchy, like stretchy both ways. If I do it in the right direction, you can see, there it is. It's really, really stretchy. And did I just crack my, no, I thought I cracked my sewing. I knew this wasn't going to work because this dress needs something with structure, right? It's a nail-line dress and it's so big that it needs something that stays a little bit in that A-line shape so that you can appreciate how the shape of it. So it needs something with structure that will fold a little bit but not hug and drag down the way this super stretchy knit fabric does. So I knew from the start this wasn't going to work, plus it has pockets, and pockets in really stretchy fabrics, not the thing. But I still did it because, yeah, like I said, I was so worked up and I was like, I'm just going to do it. And I wanted to learn how to make the dress because I really like it, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do it in a really annoying fabric so that when I actually figure out what kind of fabric I need and get it, it will feel easier. So, yes. So you see how it falls. It's not looking very good. I don't like it. But it's a dress. And I made the pockets and everything. So, I'm really happy with the sleeves. It wasn't easy, basically because of how nasty this fabric is. But I still made it, and look, it looks fairly decent. It looks like a sleeves, and it fits nicely, and the top of the sleeves is at the top of the shoulder, and it's not twirling or anything. It's quite nice. Pretty pleased with that. But yeah, and at the back you have two bits that you're supposed to connect with a piece of ribbon and then have a button on the other end, but I got lazy, so I just sewed a button through both of them, and I can pull that over my head without an issue. So yes, the problem is obviously you're not supposed to make such a massive thing in super stretchy fluid knit fabric, right? So yes, the pockets are a bit too low as well. So I don't know what to do. It needs a bit of stretch because of the sleeve part, I guess. Even though she says you can cut the sleeves in the bias, so that way, so that it's a bit stretchy. I've seen people made it out of poplin, so that can be an option, and it gave the nice drape that I want, and not hugging my hips and thing. But poplin doesn't have stretch, does it? I've looked for woven fabric with stretches, and I asked on Instagram, and someone said to me that there are some stretch cotton that are woven, but that it's not super common, and indeed I have a hard time finding some. Or that I could pick a knit fabric, but something that had more structure, like scuba or ponte di Roma. Is that how you say it? But I don't know that will work. I don't know. I just decided that no knit fabric for this dress. Maybe that's wrong. I don't mind sewing with knit fabric. I think it's okay. It's definitely harder, but eventually I'm gonna want to make garments with knit fabric, so I might as well just do it. And also, I find it funny because the problem is, if you don't use knit fabric, then you have very little options because if you want a dress which is not stretchy, then you're gonna have pieces and a closing system like a zipper or buttons. But if you're a beginner, you don't want to make a zipper or a button band. So yeah, I didn't find many beginner-friendly patterns that used woven, that were supposedly using woven fabrics. If you have any recommendations, please just help me. I'm just asking for help right now. So yes, I will not throw that away. I will cut it at the hips because I'm quite pleased with the top part. It fits nicely and it was quite a hassle. So I'm just going to cut it and have a top basically and screw the skirt. But yeah, so it's not a complete waste because I can salvage it and it's gonna be comfortable. And yeah, so I have simple cotton, which is woven cotton with no stretch in it, which is quite light and airy, and I will try to make that dress in it. It doesn't have stretch, so I will cut the sleeves in the bias and hopefully that will work. If you have any idea of what kind of fabric I can use for this, I've seen someone use a jersey, say jersey in French, but I know this is not how you're supposed to say it. I've seen someone say they used a knit fabric, but they didn't specify what kind of knit fabric. So this is a knit fabric and this doesn't work. So yeah, and I've seen people use viscose, but I'm afraid that viscose is going to be too light and too fluid. And I'm saying fluid, is that an English word? You know, like this, drapey. And I'm afraid it's going to have kind of the same effect as that. Obviously, I don't want something that just stays straight. I want a balance. And yes, I believe I kind of need a woven fabric for this. Suggestions? Help? But yeah, this will be a top when I decide to cut it. And finally, something great, something that worked out perfectly. Ta-da! So let me put the footage that I took of myself wearing it. So obviously I'm wearing tights because it's cold, but it's a summer dress. So this is another pattern from M comme Marie, and this is the M comme Mistral, which has two versions. One is a top and one is a dress. So I made the dress, and so it's a sleeveless dress with, again, a lower back, and then it has gathers that fall just a bit over the waist. It's a loose fitting dress, and yes, I have made it longer. What the pattern says, I have had it about 10 centimeters because that's I've used all the fabric that I could possibly to fit it, and I was able to add 10 centimeters to the skirt, which was great. And now it falls just above my knee, which is what I wanted. And this fabric is pineapple-y and I love it. This is a cotton batiste. I've looked it up, and batiste cotton is a thing on Google in English as well, so you should understand what I mean. It's a woven, very lightweight cotton, and it's drapey and soft and light, but it's not transparent. I don't know if that's because the color is dark, but it's not. That's another thing, that I almost made this in a knit fabric, and that would have not been good, I think, because of the gathers. I think gathers look better in this type of fabric. No? Don't you think? But anyway, this worked so well and I'm so happy with it. I love the fabric. I want to make everything out of this fabric, but it's not possible because it doesn't have stretch. Do you think I can use this type of fabric, which has like zero stretch, it's not nothing, but if I cut it in the bias, then it has a little bit, teeny tiny bit. Do you think I can use this batiste cotton for the other dress? Do you think that's a possibility? Because I would love to. I think this would have the structure necessary for the other dress, right? But well, I didn't have a lot of it, so I used it for this dress, which requires very little fabric. I only had about 1.80 meters, and like I said, I made it longer. So yeah, you probably need 1.70 meters only to make it. So I really like making the gathers. I found that was really fun and that worked out quite well. That was cool. It's not perfect. There's a little... So this is what I'm talking about when I say the piece that is inside this bit here. So you see this is the inside of the dress and I have this bit here coming in. I caught it in the side seam. Look. The front bit is caught under the arm. I don't feel it when I'm wearing it. It's not showing up on the front, and I am not unpicking the entire side seam just for that. So I'm still very happy with it. The back has a dip as well, and maybe it's a bit too low because I can't wear a bra, which is fine for me. I can afford to do that, but you know, maybe if I make, because I'm definitely going to make more, maybe I will not make it as low. So yes, I'm happy. I'm really happy with this, and yeah, like I said, it was quite an expensive fabric. I don't know what I was thinking when I was getting it, but it's gold pineapples on navy. It's quite an expensive fabric. I feel like this batiste cotton is so nice and so precious, and this is the project that I love the most. So I think that when I say I am fabric driven, I think that's it for me. But yeah, I'm really happy with it. I did a nice hem all along the way. Yes, that's it. That's my biggest accomplishment. No, it's really nice. I'm really happy with it. It's gonna get lots of wear, and I like gathers, and I like batiste cotton. So I learned something. So yeah, that was the sewing rant and projects. So I hope you enjoyed. I do encourage you to give me advice, to tell me what you think about the mess that I started this segment with. And yes, I am feeling quite enthusiastic about keeping this up and trying to sew more versions of I want a functional version of the Louisa dress, and I have other types of dresses and tops as well. So yes, I have in particular a t-shirt pattern and another batiste cotton. I'm just a bit afraid that the t-shirt pattern isn't written for wovens. Even though I have found someone on the internet that did it out of poplin. So it should work, right? If you're a sewing pattern maker, please just list the types of fabric that people should use when they're babies and they can't think for themselves, like me. I haven't actually woven a lot, but I have something great to tell you. Jill, who is a lovely viewer of the podcast, wrote to me on Ravelry to help me out because, you know, I'm having tension issues and other stuff with that thing. So this is a scrappy hand-woven wrap that I'm making. I'm making this big, gigantic scarf out of all the hand-dyed scraps. And I'm having tension issues because I warped that loom like an idiot. And she suggested that I use a pickup stick on the places where the warp, like to stuck a pickup stick here to push the threads, which I haven't tried yet because right now I'm at a spot where the tension is manageable, but when I reach a point where it's silly again, I will definitely try that. And she also she also told me that she had a really nifty trick to weaving ends when you're weaving. So when you have lots of yarn changes like I have because I'm making something scrappy, you know, you have all those hands over there, and I was saying that I will have to weave those all in and that is going to take quite some time. But what Jill told me is that she used the plies of the yarn, so she separates the plies of every yarn and then she makes one half of those plies overlap the next yarn that you're starting with and only leave a bit of like some of the plies of the yarn hanging, so that she has the yarn separated in two, for example, and one, let me try to, so you have the plies of the yarn like this, you split them, you overlap the yarn that you finished with and the yarn that you started with, and then you let the rest of the plies hang, and you can then cut those quite close because they're secured from you having split the plies and woven them in your fabric. The reason I don't overlap the yarns when I'm weaving is because it leaves a bulk and it's visible and I don't like it. But if I separate the plies, it's not visible at all, and I have done it just to test it. And can I find it? Yes, I can find it because I did a mistake just next to it. So I have here overlapped half of the ply of this yarn and half of the ply of this yarn. They're overlapped here, and I only have half of them hanging on that side that I will cut in the end, and it's not making a bulk at all, and that's amazing. And I think it's a great trick and I'm super happy, and that means that for the rest of this wrap I won't have to weaving ends, so that's absolutely fantastic. I will only have a bit of cloth that I started with that I will have to weaving the ends, but it will definitely save me some time, and now I have this really good method for weaving in ends in my weaving project, so please don't fall. So that's super great, and that's great. And yeah, thank you so much, Jill, for your help. That was really really great and really helpful, and I'm so glad that you found me and helped me, because this is perfect. Yeah, so that's it for this week's episode, guys. It was, as usual, all over the place, especially with the start of my sewing journey, right? I hope you still enjoyed this week's episode. I will hopefully have a lot of knitting to share with you next week. Yeah. I have a cat with me to say goodbye, so goodbye. I wish you, stop scratching my handmade sweater please. I wish you a happy day, night and week, and I will see you next time. Bye.